In 1751, in the quiet town of Henley-on-Thames, a teacup sealed the fate of one of England's most notorious daughters. Her name? Mary Blandy. Her weapon? Arsenic. Her motive? Love, or so she claimed. Welcome to Chill Memoirs, where past crimes deliver present chills. Tonight, we sip on poison and betrayal. Let's unravel the chilling case of Mary Blandy. Mary Blandy was born into privilege. Her father, Francis Blandy, was a respected attorney, well-connected and proud. Mary, their only daughter, was sharp-witted, highly educated, and rumored to be worth £10,000 in dowry a fortune at the time. Suitors came from far and wide, drawn not only by Mary Blandy's respectable dowry, but also by her refined manners and intelligence traits that stood out in 18th century Oxfordshire society. The Blandy household was often abuzz with visits from eligible bachelors, hopeful glances, and the sound of clinking teacups in parlor courtships. But none captivated Mary more than one man. Captain William Cranstoun, a dashing Scottish officer with noble blood and just enough mystery to make her heart race. His uniform gleamed, his tongue was silver, and his every gesture spoke of confidence, culture, and calculated charm. To Mary, he was the embodiment of romance. He spoke softly of distant battles, Scottish castles, and a future they would build together. He wrote her poetic letters sealed with wax and pledged his unwavering devotion. It wasn't long before she fell deeply under his spell. What Mary didn't know, what no one in the quiet town of Henley suspected, was that Captain Cranstoun was already married. Back in Scotland, a wife waited, forgotten in his pursuit of fortune and status. But Cranstoun had no intention of letting the truth get in the way of marrying into the Blandy estate. Behind the polished boots and polished lies, a scandal was already brewing, a web of deception that would unravel into betrayal, poison, and ultimately a hanging. When Francis Blandy, a respected attorney and devoted father, discovered Captain Cranstoun's dark secret, it shattered the fragile illusion he had tolerated for months. The whispers from Scotland were no longer rumors, they were confirmed facts. Cranstoun was already married, and worse, he had no intention of ending that union legally. Enraged and betrayed, Francis did what any father would. He confronted his daughter, sternly, passionately. He forbade her from seeing Cranstoun ever again. He told her that the man she loved was a liar, a fraud, and a disgrace to her good name. But Mary, sweet, intelligent, and until now obedient Mary, didn't listen. Instead, she clung to her love even harder, like a drowning woman grasping a floating illusion. In her eyes, Cranstoun was not the villain her father was. Francis had become the obstacle standing between her and the only future she believed in. Her letters to Cranstoun grew more desperate. Their secret meetings took on a darker tone. Their once romantic dreams of marriage twisted into something more sinister. "If only my father were gone," they whispered. "Then we could be free." It was a thought. Then a plan. Then a chilling resolve. What began as infatuation spiraled into obsession. And what followed next would transform Mary Blandy from a lovesick daughter into a name etched forever in Britain's criminal history. Cranstoun allegedly sent her a love potion, a powder, claiming it would make her father like him. But that powder was arsenic. Mary stirred it into her father's gruel. He grew sick, vomiting, convulsing, deteriorating. Days later, he died in agony. It began with a letter, folded neatly. sealed with wax. Inside, a small paper packet, an innocent-looking powder that Captain Cranstoun called a love potion. He claimed it was a charm, a blend of subtle ingredients that would soften her father's heart, ease his anger, and make him finally accept their union. To Mary, desperate and deluded, it sounded like hope in powdered form. "Just stir a little into his food," he wrote. "He'll warm to me. He'll bless our marriage." But the truth was far darker. That powder was arsenic, a deadly poison, as cold and unforgiving as the betrayal that sent it. Cranstoun had spun the most lethal of lies, and Mary, blinded by love, became the instrument of her father's slow demise. One evening, in the dimly lit kitchen of the Blandy home, Mary carefully stirred the powder into her father's gruel. She watched as he ate it, smiling faintly, perhaps believing she was helping him, helping them. But it wasn't love her father swallowed. It was death. Soon after, Francis Blandy fell ill, violently ill. He vomited again and again. His skin turned pale, clammy. His body convulsed with pain. And his sharp legal mind, once the pride of Oxfordshire, began to fade under the agony. Neighbors watched helplessly as the well-respected gentleman wasted away before their eyes, day by dreadful day. His cries filled the house. The servants whispered. The doctors puzzled. Still, Mary insisted it was just illness, just chance, just misfortune. But her guilt seeped through the cracks. Her father, in his final hours, whispered something chilling to those nearby. My dear girl would not do this unless Cranstoun persuaded her. And on August 14th, 1751, Francis Blandy took his final breath, his body broken and his heart betrayed. The truth, like poison, could no longer be hidden. The Blandy household had grown quiet, but not with peace. It was the uneasy silence of death approaching, of truth unraveling. Servants, once loyal and discreet, began to whisper. They had seen things, small things at first, easy to overlook, until the master of the house began to die. One housemaid, while cleaning the dishes, noticed a strange white residue clinging to the sides of the gruel bowl, the same bowl Mr. Blandy had eaten for moments before he fell ill. Another, walking past the study one evening, saw Mary hastily burning papers in the fireplace letters, perhaps? Correspondence between her and Cranstoun? The flames licked at secrets, but not quickly enough. And then came the moment no one could ignore. A third servant caught Mary throwing powder into the hearth, watching it crackle and spark unnaturally. It was just to clean the fire, she said with a nervous smile, but her hands trembled. Whispers turned to suspicions. Suspicions turned into an official inquiry. The authorities were called, and Mary Blandy was questioned. It didn't take long before she gave what many believed to be a soft, almost sorrowful confession. My dear, I did not think it would have done him any harm. It was only to make him fond of Cranstoun. But arsenic does not understand affection. It kills quietly, painfully, without remorse. During the search, a packet of the same white powder was recovered. Chemists examined it. It was arsenic unmistakably, and it matched the residue in the food, the powder near the fireplace, and the potion Cranstoun had sent. The case exploded in public interest. Newspapers covered it relentlessly. A young woman, intelligent and well-bred, standing accused of patricide by poison. It was scandal and tragedy intertwined. The trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming, witness testimony, chemical proof, and Mary's own words sealed her fate. The court had one conclusion. Mary Blandy had knowingly administered poison to her father, and she would hang for it. On the morning of April 6, 1752, a hush fell over the crowd gathered outside Oxford Castle. It was execution day. Mary Blandy, now infamous across Britain, was to be hanged for the murder of her father, a crime that had shocked and divided the nation. She stepped out into the cold air, dressed in black, her bonnet tied neatly beneath her chin. Her steps were measured, her face pale but serene. Despite the looming gallows, Mary remained calm, composed, dignified. Witnesses later described her as having the poise of a woman who had accepted her fate, not with terror, but with a tragic grace. As she approached the scaffold, she made a final request, quietly, firmly. "I pray you, let no man touch me after I am dead. Let the women do it." It was a plea for modesty, even in death. A final gesture of decorum from a woman who had once moved in genteel society, now standing at the edge of infamy. At precisely noon, the trapdoor was released. Mary Blandy was hanged. Her body swung briefly, then stilled, ending a life forever, marked by love, deception, and irreversible choices. But what of Captain William Cranstoun, the man at the center of it all? By the time Mary was arrested, he had already fled, escaping across the Channel to France, beyond the reach of English justice. He would never face trial, yet fate has its ironies. Only a few months later, Cranstoun died, suddenly in France of all things, by suspected poisoning. The man who had introduced arsenic into Mary's world was, in the end, consumed by it himself. Back in England, the public was divided. Some saw Mary as a pawn, a young woman manipulated by a cunning lover and driven to desperation. They wept for her. They called her naïve. They said Cranstoun had killed 2 people, not just one. But others believed differently. To them, Mary Blandy was calculated, cold, and cruel. She had stirred poison into her father's food, watched him suffer, and called it love. In truth, perhaps she was both victim and villain, a woman torn between devotion and delusion. But one fact remains beyond dispute. Francis Blandy died, poisoned by the hand of the daughter who once adored him, driven not by hate, but by love's most dangerous illusion. Mary Blandy's story echoes centuries later, a haunting reminder of how desperation can curdle into murder. But let me know what you think. Was she a naive girl under a lover's spell, or was she a calculated killer? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a crime from the past. This is Chill Memoirs, where history's shadows are retold and whispers and past crimes deliver present chills.